So yeah, hi everyone. Thanks to Mika and Maria for your great talks. Sorry I can't be there either in person. Been battling long COVID and then got another bug on top of it last week. But yeah, thanks to the organisers for letting me present remotely, arranging this so last minute. I'm Emma Kopra. I'm a PhD student in my final year. I'm from Helsinki, Finland originally, but I moved to UK to do my BSc and MSc and now indeed PhD, all at King's College London. I'm supervised by Professor Young and Dr. James Rocker. And we collaborate with the Global Drug Survey, from who we got this data that I'm about to present. So shout outs also to GDS founder Adam Winstock and my stats mentor Jason Ferris, and also Kim Coopers, who also collaborated with this paper, and to the psychiatric trials group at KCL. This is a fresh, nice photo from last week in front of a new psychedelics and mental health research center that opened at our campus in partnership with Compass Pathways. I don't work in the clinical trials myself, but very proud to be part of this amazing, lovely group of people. Don't have any conflicts of interest myself to disclose. So I'm indeed presenting some findings from the Global Drug Survey, data on how people self-treat their mental health problems with psychedelics. This investigation was published in the journal Psychopharmacology in March. If you want to check it out more thoroughly, it's quite a long paper. It's quite broad, explorative analysis with loads of findings, but I'll aim to deliver the main bits, the most interesting bits here. For a very brief background, LSD and psilocybin containing mushrooms are the most commonly used classical psychedelics in the Western world, at least. Here's some prevalence data from England and Wales and from the US based on epidemiological surveys. And as you're aware, these drugs have shown very quite promising early evidence of their therapeutic potential for injury conditions when accompanied by psychotherapy. And with the increased publicity and hype, indeed quite often sensationalizing headlines like these in the media, as more and more people drawn to use these drugs independently, including for the sort of psychedelic self-treatments. But there's been very little research on this type of use specifically, while this should be very important, both from the harm reduction perspective and also research and clinical trials can generally bring information on aspects that clinical trials haven't provided as well. So the aims of this study were to investigate patterns of psychedelic self-treatment, outcomes and outcome predictors of self-treatment using data from the Global Drug Survey 2020. So the Global Drug Survey is the world's largest online survey in drug use, advertised online, self-selective, non-representative sample. GDS 2020 was conducted just before the pandemic, so the responses are unaffected by that. This year's survey included a specialist section on psychedelic self-treatment, and those who indicated using psychedelics for this purpose in the past year were directed to this specialist section. They selected which psychedelics they'd used for self-treatment and then the single substance they found most useful if they had treated with many psychedelics. And they were asked to answer subsequent questions based on experiences with the most useful drug. So this perhaps already introduces some bias towards a bit more positive outcomes. Various further questions about self-treatment experiences. Won't spend time on these, as you'll see them very soon in the results. Okay, but then the main outcome of interest I'll explain. So they indicated the change they observed as a result of their self-treatment across 17 items, each rated from -3 strong negative to +3 strong positive changes. And they were also asked to indicate the duration of most positive effects. Then they were asked if they noticed any negative effects, and if yes, they were presented with a list of 10 different negative effects, rated occurrence of these, this time on an ordinal scale, non-mild, moderate, severe. and again indicate the duration of most negative effects as well. We conducted 4 regression analyses investigating predictors of positive outcomes, of negative outcomes, and duration of positive and negative outcomes. All the regressions were different types because of how the data was, the types of scales used. But the predictor variables are all the same on the right, as well as the adjusted p-value that we're using. The total GDS sample on that year was over 100,000 respondents. But our final sample for this analysis of people self-treating with LSD and psilocybin was a bit over 3,000, so still quite big. Sample was predominantly young, 80% white, 72% male, relatively highly educated, 56.5% had a lifetime diagnosis of mental health condition. Some data on patterns of treatment, slightly more were using LSD than mushrooms. Depression and anxiety were the most commonly treated problems, followed by relationship problem. Most used doses to induce intense or moderate psychedelic experience. 80% obtained advice, most commonly from online sources or social circle. Here's results for the self-treatment outcome items with mean scores from highest to lowest. All items had averages above 0, indicating positive change on average across all items. Highest scores were on items related to insight, but also mood, psychiatric symptoms, overall broad range of benefits. CRAND mean 1.4, reflecting mild to moderate improvements on average. These are the same items. This was not in the paper. Someone just asked on Twitter about the response distributions, which I think was a good idea. So I included it here. So the green shades indicate positive change. Yellow is 0, so no change. And orange, red shades, negative change. Then for negative effects, 22.5% indicated experiencing some negative effects. That is, they answered yes to this filtered question in the bottom left corner. And this set of respondents then rated the percents of these 10 different outcomes in an ordinal scale. The numbers in the graph indicate the number of respondents rating that item. So to ease interpretation, here's the percentages for each, indicating the proportion among the total sample. To raise one limitation already, we didn't have any free-form answers for any of the outcomes, and it would have been interesting to record some more serious events as well. There was, however, one additional question that's not in the slides, whether they saw emergent medical treatment following self-treatment experiences. 4.2% of those with negative effects, corresponding to 0.9% of the total sample had sought emergent medical treatment following self-treatment with LSD or mushrooms in the past year. And here's outcome durations for both positive and negative outcomes. Positive outcomes generally lasted for longer than negative, for slightly over half. They lasted for 4 weeks or more. Negative outcomes among those who had some, for nearly half of these, they lasted up to 2 days only, but there was still a significant minority with some longer lasting negative effects as well. This is the same data in cumulative percentage plots, green line positive, red line negative outcomes. No, it's not straightforward to compare these results. The clinical trials results, because everything with the methods and data is so different, but overall persistent negative effects appeared more common than what's reported in clinical settings. It's been refreshing to see just very recently some more attention and research also on like adverse outcomes from psychedelics, which is obviously super important. In clinical trials as well, the adverse effect reporting is not always adequate when studies commonly focus on reporting average effects and average changes in symptom scale scores. It's very easy to miss the cases where things don't go as well and things that are also not necessarily captured in the commonly used measures. Then the results from the regression analysis, I left these more through slides with statistics and everything here, but to summarize everything more efficiently in an easier way. First, for the 17-item self-treatment outcome scale, high intensive experience seeking advice for treatment, psilocybin, and treating PTSD were linked to higher scores on the scale. So basically, more positive changes, of which high intensity was also linked to longer duration of positive outcome. I don't know, the PTSD one is quite interesting, but this effect may have been at least contributed to by the wider range of symptoms, problems often observed in PTSD, if you think of the items that were included, which was very broad. So there's more room for improvement across more outcome items. For negative outcomes, high intensive experience, treating with LSD and younger age were linked to more negative effects, of which younger age were also linked to longer duration of negative outcomes. And some findings I flagged up. Psilocybin was indeed linked to less negative effects compared to LSD. This has been found previously in several studies on naturalistic use. Regarding overall therapeutic efficacy or positive effects, previous literature is more inconclusive and more scarce on this. And likewise, in our study, the effect on the overall self-treatment outcome scores were smaller than the difference in negative effects. And younger age linked to more negative effects. This again has been found previously and may be mediated both by perhaps riskier patterns of use and hypothetically just psychological development, maybe ability to manage the experience. The final one, I flagged up one possibly interesting null finding. So no condition was linked to increased negative effects, not even a trend. If you think of stuff like psychosis and many others that sometimes have been thought to maybe be have more prone to negative effects, but not in our sample. But yeah, this point there is important to remember as well. The most important limitations of this study relate to sampling biases and recruitment volunteer bias. So we have maybe more of this than in Maria's study. Also, besides these, who chooses to self-treat with psychedelics is self-selective in itself, and relatedly, there's also survivorship bias aspect to it. So who continues self-treating based on previous experiences. But then again, as the survey only asked about past year experiences, maybe some more experienced self-treaters might have observed most benefits a longer time ago in years before, so that could kind of balance hypothetically perhaps some of the positive bias. We don't know. And then self-report and respective nature of the study and response biases. Both the sampling stuff and response biases are things that are issues in most survey research. Some of them also in clinical research, but these may be particularly pronounced with psychedelic research, which is somewhat polarizing topical area, loads of opinions and implications for public policy. Listed some other limitations as well. That's about everything. We're also planning another paper, hopefully next year, with some secondary analysis from this data that focuses on comparing self-treatment experiences and outcomes between LSD and psilocybin and also MDMA. So we did compare the total outcomes sort of between LSD and psilocybin here. But now we're also going to look at specific items. So if there's any differences in sort of individual outcomes, and then also, yeah, add MDMA, self-treatment MDMA to the mix as well. But yeah, thank you for listening. We should have decent time for discussion. I guess interested to hear if you got any thoughts or comments.
Thank you. That was a really, really interesting representation. And as you said, we have now good time for questions or comments.
Thank you, Emma. So this is obviously going to be speculation, but why do you think a younger age predicted like more negative outcomes? Do you have any idea based on the data you gathered? Obviously, it's going to be set and setting, maybe, but what do you think yourself?
Yeah, that's probably one. I think I mentioned in the sort of maybe riskier patterns and riskier context of use. And then possibly, I mean, sort of readiness for the sort of very profound experience if your brain is maybe fully developed, if you're in your teens or early 20s. It's been seen in a few other studies as well, like a slight relationship on average. Older people tend to have maybe less destabilizing trips.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's relevant as well because some people are speculating about using psychedelics for teenagers. So then obviously that theory about the maturing brain might be relevant at some point in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess psychedelics, they induce such like a plastic, like malleable brain. I feel like teenage brain is already quite, it's in that state at the moment. So I'm not a fan of, at least not in the near future, of starting any trials on underage people. I think we have to establish the safety in older people first, in my opinion. But of course, there are still, many young people use them. Not everyone has adverse effects, but there is a correlation, I think.
I realize this question might be beyond the scope of your paper, but I'm wondering if there are any conversations on the team about the correlation between the media images you showed early on in the presentation. And
sorry, the correlation?
Any correlation between the way the media is presenting the claims about psilocybin and LSD, for example, mostly psilocybin, I'd say, and whether you see the same kind of language used in the self-reporting. In other words, do you see any relationship between the media hype and how people are self-reporting?
I think that is perhaps a difficult thing to study, at least in this one, because it was a cross-sectional, only from 1 year. One thing that I do remember seeing from the GDS data over the years is that from maybe 2017 to 2022 or 21, there was an increase. There's always this one question of if you saw emergent medical treatment following LSD and following psilocybin use. And I think there was a slight increase in the rate of people who had sought emergent medical treatment following psilocybin use. So not only the amount of people using psilocybin in that survey had increased, but also the percentage of people who apparently had severe adverse effects appears to have increase. So I feel like there is now it's becoming more mainstream. So yeah, more people are using without. If earlier it was a more niche thing, and those who did it maybe knew better what they were doing, now it's more like, oh, just take them, and everyone, yeah, they're not maybe as aware of the especially psychological risks involved. Yeah, I don't know much of the hard data what there is, but it would be definitely interesting to know the impact. But I bet there is definitely impact, some impact. Don't know if that answers the question.